Kenyan President William Ruto said on Tuesday security was his utmost priority after protests against a bill to raise taxes descended into violence, with police firing on demonstrators trying to storm the legislature, killing at least 5. More in this report.
Scenes of chaos in Nairobi on Tuesday after protests against higher taxes turned deadly. Video showed some bodies lifeless in the street after police fired on demonstrators trying to storm the legislature, killing at least 5 people and wounding dozens more.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm here to address you.
Footage obtained by Reuters showed some protesters inside Kenya's National Assembly chamber, demanding the resignation of Kenya's President William Ruto. In a televised address to the nation, Ruto said the security of Kenyans remained his utmost priority and blamed the violence on, quote, dangerous criminals.
Today, Kenya experienced an unprecedented attack on its democracy, rule of law, and the integrity of its constitutional institutions. An otherwise legitimate expression of the fundamental rights and freedoms of assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petitioning of public authorities by a section of law-abiding citizens of the Republic of Kenya was infiltrated and hijacked by a group of organized criminals.
Earlier, protests overwhelmed security forces after Kenyan lawmakers approved legislation to raise taxes. Police opened fire after tear gas and water cannons failed to disperse the crowds. Sections of the parliament building were set ablaze. Local media said lawmakers were evacuated through an underground tunnel. Protests and clashes also took place in several other cities and towns across Kenya. In the coastal city of Mombasa, protesters voiced their opposition to the tax hikes.
The taxes are so high. We are being taxed our salary, and any other thing that you are going to buy with the little that you are remaining with is also taxed.
We are fighting for ourselves because our future is in our own hands. If at all we let them direct us on how we're going to, on how they're going to direct in this country, it's going to be war unto us, and we're not going to let that happen.
Later on Tuesday, Kenya's defense minister said the army had been deployed to help the police deal with a security emergency, which had resulted in the destruction and breaching of critical infrastructure. The finance bill aims to raise an additional $2.7 billion in taxes, part of an effort to lighten Kenya's heavy debt load, with interest payments alone consuming 37% of annual revenue. In Washington, the White House said the United States was closely monitoring the situation in Nairobi and urging calm.
In the Kenyan capital of Nairobi, protesters clashed with police demanding the resignation of President William Ruto over proposed tax hikes. The demonstrations, which began peacefully, turned chaotic as police have opened fire on protesters outside Kenya's parliament. Police started shooting after tear gas and water cannon failed to disperse a crowd of thousands who had overwhelmed officers. Flames there could be seen coming from inside the building. A paramedic said at least 10 people had been killed, and a Reuters journalist outside the parliament counted the bodies of at least 5 protesters. Kenyan activist Auma Obama, the half-sister of former US President Barack Obama, was among the protesters who were tear-gassed. Now, despite the heavy-handed police response, the demonstrators remained resolute. They taunted officers, held up signs demanding reject the finance bill, and warned Ruto's administration of their determination to force him from power. Amid the turmoil, ambulances struggled through the clouds of tear gas, highlighting the intensity of the unrest. Let's now take a closer look at why Kenyans are protesting against the finance bill. A finance bill is typically presented to Parliament before the start of a financial year, outlining the government's fiscal plans. In the 2024-25 bill, the Kenyan government aims to raise $2.7 billion in additional taxes to reduce the budget deficit and state borrowing. Kenya's public debt stands at 68% of GDP, exceeding the 55% recommended by the World Bank and the IMF. Facing acute liquidity challenges, Kenya has turned to the IMF, which has urged the government to meet revenue targets to secure more funding. Now, the protesters want the government to abandon the planned tax hikes, arguing they will stifle the economy and increase the cost of living for Kenyans already struggling to make ends meet. What are the proposed tax measures sparking these protests? The proposed measures include new levies there on basic commodities like bread, vegetable oil and sugar, and a new motor vehicle circulation tax of 2.5% of a car's value to be paid annually. An eco-levy on most manufactured goods including sanitary, towels and diapers is also proposed. Additionally, the bill suggests increasing existing taxes on financial transactions. The government there argues these measures are necessary to fund development programs and reduce public debt.